The first time Richard hit me, I was 23 years old and 6 months pregnant with our first child. He apologized for 3 days straight, bought me flowers, swore it would never happen again. The last time Richard hit me, I was 52 years old, and he told me I was too old, too fat, and too broken for anyone else to want me. That even if I left, where would I go? Who would take care of me? I had no money, no job, no life outside of him. He was right about some of it, but he was wrong about the most important thing. He was wrong about what I could survive. My name is Patricia Ann Lawson. I'm 54 years old now, and for 32 years, I lived in a house that looked perfect from the outside, but was hell on the inside. For 32 years, I told myself it would get better, that he would change, that I just needed to be more patient, more understanding, more something. For 32 years, I was wrong. This is the story of how I finally left, how my own daughter didn't believe me until it was almost too late, and how I learned that it's never too late to save your own life, even when everyone around you thinks you should just accept the life you have. If you've ever stayed in a situation that was killing you because you thought you had no other choice, if you've ever been told you're too old to start over, if you've ever believed that surviving is the same thing as living, then maybe you'll understand my story. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. In the 1970s and 80s, my parents, William and Charlene Harper, had what I thought was a good marriage. Daddy worked at the FedEx hub. Mama stayed home with me and my 3 younger siblings. They went to church every Sunday, had dinner together every night, never raised their voices at each other. It wasn't until years later that my sister Monica told me the truth. Daddy never raised his voice because Mama knew better than to provoke him. The accidents Mama had, the broken wrist from slipping on ice, the black eye from walking into a cabinet door, weren't accidents at all. But we didn't talk about those things. We were a respectable family. Daddy was a deacon at church. Mama sang in the choir. We smiled in our Christmas photos and pretended everything was fine. That's what you did. That's what I learned to do. I met Richard Lawson when I was 21, working as a receptionist at a dental office. He was 28, confident, charming, with a good job as an insurance adjuster. He took me to nice restaurants, told me I was beautiful, said he wanted to marry me and give me a good life. We got married 6 months later. I was pregnant within 3 months of the wedding. The first time he hit me was during an argument about money. I'd bought groceries without asking him. First, we couldn't afford it. He said I was irresponsible with money. Didn't I understand how hard he worked? The slap came out of nowhere. 1 second he was yelling. The next second my face was burning and I was on the floor. He cried. He begged for forgiveness. He swore it would never happen again. And I believed him because I wanted to. Because I was pregnant and scared and 23 years old. Because I thought marriage was forever. Through sickness and health, better or worse. I didn't know worse could mean 32 years of walking on eggshells. Of monitoring every word I said. Of trying to be perfect enough that he wouldn't explode. We had 3 children, Michelle in 1993, Brandon in 1995, and Tyler in 1998. When the kids were little, Richard was careful. He never hit me where bruises would show if I had to take them to school. He never lost control in front of them more, at least I thought he didn't. Years later, Michelle told me she remembered everything. Every slammed door. Every shouted threat. Every time. I lied about why I was wearing long sleeves in the summer, or sunglasses indoors. She said she spent her whole childhood feeling helpless, knowing what was happening but not knowing what to do. I'd thought I was protecting them by staying quiet. Instead, I'd taught them that abuse was normal, that women should accept violence as the price of keeping a family together. When the kids were young, I poured all my energy into them, into making their lives as normal as possible, as happy as possible. If I kept them safe and loved, I told myself, then my suffering had purpose. But Richard was always there, like a storm cloud hanging over everything. If dinner wasn't perfect, if the house wasn't clean enough, if I talked to another man at church for too long, if I spent money without permission, anything could set him off. Sometimes it was physical, a shove, a slap, being grabbed by the throat and slammed against a wall. Sometimes it was worse than physical, being told I was worthless, stupid, ugly, that no one else would ever want me, that I was lucky he put up with me at all. I learned to be small, to be quiet, to anticipate his moods and adjust myself accordingly. I became an expert at reading his face, his tone, his body language, trying to predict when the storm was coming so I could protect myself and the kids. I thought about leaving. God, I thought about it all the time. But where would I go? I hadn't worked in years. I'd quit my job when Michelle was born because Richard said a mother should stay home with her children. I had no money of my own. Every dollar we had was in accounts Richard controlled. I had no family nearby who could help. My parents were in Memphis, and I'd lost touch with most of my friends over the years because Richard didn't like me going out without him. And I was scared. Scared that if I left, Richard would hurt me worse. Scared that he'd take the kids. Scared that I couldn't make it on my own. Scared that I'd be proving him right. I really was as worthless and incapable as he said I was. So I stayed, and I told myself the kids needed me to stay, that I was being strong, that I was doing what was best for my family. The years passed. Michelle graduated high school, went to college. Brandon followed 2 years later. Tyler was the last to leave, heading to community college when he turned 18. And suddenly it was just me and Richard. No kids to protect. No reason to stay quiet. No buffer between me and his anger. That's when everything got worse. Without the kids in the house, Richard had no reason to control himself. Before, he'd at least pretended to be a good father. At least waited until the kids were asleep to explode. Now there was no one to perform for, no one to witness. The violence escalated. What used to happen once every few months, he'd come home from work angry about something, a problem with a client, traffic, the weather, anything, and I'd become his target. The verbal abuse was constant. Every day, he found new ways to tell me I was worthless, that I was getting old and ugly, that I'd wasted his life, that I was useless now that the kids were gone, that I should be grateful he still kept me around. Look at yourself, he'd say, forcing me to look in the mirror. You're 52 years old. You're fat. You've got gray hair and wrinkles. You think anyone else wants you? You're lucky I'm still here. I started to believe him. When you hear something enough times from someone who's supposed to love you, you start to think it must be true. I gained weight because I ate to cope with the stress. I had gray hair because I couldn't afford to color it. Richard controlled all the money and questioned every expense. I had wrinkles because I was living in constant fear, and stress ages you. But he was right that I was older. And there's this belief in our society that domestic violence only happens to young women. That if you're still in an abusive relationship at 50, it's somehow your fault. That you should have left years ago. That if you haven't left by now, you must want to be there. I saw it in the eyes of the few people who knew anything about my situation. My sister Monica, who'd moved to Atlanta years ago, would say, "Patricia, you've been with him for 30 years. If it was really that bad, you would have left by now." My daughter, Michelle, who was 29 and living in Nashville, didn't understand at all. She'd call and I'd try to hint at how bad things were. And she'd say, "Mom, you and Dad have been married forever. Every marriage has problems. You just have to work through them." She didn't remember. Or she'd convinced herself she didn't remember. The truth of our childhood was too painful. So she'd rewritten it as normal, as fine, as just how families are. I felt invisible. Too old to matter. Too old for anyone to care. Trapped in a situation I couldn't see any way out of. The turning point came on a Friday night in October, 2 years ago. Richard came home drunk, which was happening more and more often. He'd started drinking heavily after Tyler left for college, saying he needed something to take the edge off. I was in the kitchen making dinner, baked chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, all his favorites. I'd learned that having a good meal ready sometimes prevented an explosion. But that night, nothing would have prevented it. He came in through the garage already angry about something. I heard him slamming things around, cursing. My stomach clenched. I recognized the signs. "Patricia," he yelled from the living room. I dried my hands and went to him, trying to keep my voice calm and pleasant. "Dinner's almost ready. How was your day? Don't patronize me with your fake, nice voice. I know you don't care about my day." "I do care, Richard." "Shut up. Just shut the hell up. I'm so sick of your voice, your face." I stood there, silent, knowing that anything I said would make it worse. He moved closer, and I could smell the whiskey on him. "You know what your problem is? You're useless. The kids are gone, so what's your purpose? What do you even do all day? Sit around getting fatter and older. I keep the house clean. I make your meals. You do the bare minimum. Any woman could do what you do. You think you're special. You think you matter." He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Answer me." "I'm sorry," I whispered, because that's what he wanted to hear. "I'll do better." "You can't do better. You're a waste of space." He shoved me backward. I stumbled, caught myself on the kitchen counter. My hip hit the corner hard. "Look at you," he said with disgust. "Pathetic." He walked past me, grabbed his keys off the counter. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." He left. I stood in the kitchen, shaking, my hip throbbing where it had hit the counter, and something inside me broke. Not broke like shattered, broke like cracked open. Like a door I'd kept locked for 32 years suddenly swinging wide. I realized, standing in that kitchen with the smell of baked chicken filling the air, that I was going to die if I stayed. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Either he'd kill me in a rage, or the stress would give me a heart attack. Fade away, disappear, cease to exist while still technically alive. I was 52 years old. If I was lucky, I might have 20 or 30 more years of life ahead of me. Did I want to spend them like this? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and did something I'd never done before. I took pictures of the bruises on my arms where Richard had grabbed me, pictures of the bruise forming on my hip, pictures of my face, tear-streaked and terrified. I didn't know what I was going to do with the pictures, but something told me I needed evidence, needed proof that this was real, that I wasn't crazy or exaggerating. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed. Richard didn't come home until 3 a.m. Passed out drunk, and I thought about my life. 32 years. I was 22 when we got married, 54 now. I'd spent more years with Richard than without him. He was my entire adult life. But what kind of life was it? A life of fear, of pain, of constantly diminishing myself to make him feel bigger. A life where I had no money, no independence, no identity outside of being his wife. I thought about my children. Michelle was building a successful career in marketing. Brandon was engaged to a wonderful woman. Tyler was thriving in college. They were all living full, free lives. What was I doing? Surviving, just surviving, and calling it loyalty, calling it commitment, calling it love. The next morning, Richard was hungover and apologetic. In that vague way he always was. After episodes like that, he didn't apologize for what he'd said or done. He never did, but he was quieter, less aggressive, buying himself time until the next explosion. I made him breakfast, said nothing, and started planning. I started researching domestic violence resources online, careful to delete my browser history afterward. I learned things I should have known years ago. That abuse often escalates after children leave home. That leaving is the most dangerous time. That older women face unique barriers: economic dependence, health issues, the belief that they're too old to start over. I learned that I wasn't alone, that there were thousands of women my age, trapped in abusive marriages, thinking they had nowhere to go. I found a local domestic violence hotline and called from a burner phone I'd bought with cash I'd saved from grocery money. The woman who answered didn't judge me, Didn't ask why I'd stayed so long. Didn't tell me I was too old to leave. She just listened. And then she told me about resources. Legal aid, counseling, job training programs. You can do this. It's hard, but you can do this. I wanted to believe her, but fear paralyzed me. Fear of Richard's reaction if he found out I was planning to leave. Fear of being homeless, destitute. Fear of admitting to my children that their father had been abusing me for their entire lives. Fear that Richard was right, that I was too old, too broken, too useless. I kept documenting. Every time Richard hurt me, I took pictures. Every time he threatened me or called me names, I wrote it down in a notebook I hid in the back of my closet. Every time he controlled money or isolated me from friends, I noted the date and details. I opened a bank account at a different bank than Richard used, using my maiden name. I started squirreling away money, a few dollars here and there from grocery shopping. Change I found in Richard's pockets when I did laundry. It took months to save even $100, but it was something. It was mine. I reached out to my sister Monica, tentatively testing the waters. Monica, do you ever think about leaving, starting over somewhere new? Girl, I'm 60 years old. Starting over is for young people. Why? What's going on? I couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not until I was ready. Nothing. Just thinking. In January, things came to a head in the worst possible way. Richard lost his job. He'd been with the same insurance company for 26 years, and they laid him off as part of a restructuring. At 58, he was too young to retire, but too old to easily find another position at the same level. He spiraled. The drinking got worse. The violence got worse. His entire identity had been wrapped up in his job, his ability to provide, his role as breadwinner. Without it, he didn't know who he was. And he took it out on me. One night in February, he came at me with a level of rage I'd never seen before. We'd gotten into an argument about money. We were burning through savings rapidly, and I'd suggested he look for any job, even something temporary, just to bring in income. He exploded, called me every name imaginable, said I was questioning his manhood, disrespecting him, undermining him. And then he wrapped his hands around my throat and started squeezing. I couldn't breathe. The world started to gray out. I clawed at his hands, tried to pull them away. Couldn't. This is it, I thought. This is how I die. But then he let go, shoved me away. I collapsed on the floor, gasping, my throat on fire. Look what you made me do, he said, breathing hard. You pushed me to this. This is your fault. He walked away, leaving me there. I crawled to the bathroom, locked the door, and looked in the mirror. Red marks encircled my neck, already turning purple. I took pictures with shaking hands, and I knew I had to leave. Not eventually. Not when the time was right now. Before he killed me, I called the domestic violence hotline again. He tried to strangle me, I said, my voice hoarse. I think he's going to kill me if I don't leave. Do you have somewhere safe you can go right now? No, I have nowhere. We have a shelter. We can send someone to pick you up. Can you pack a bag without him noticing? He's asleep. He drank himself unconscious after it happened. Okay. Pack a bag with essentials, clothes, medications, important documents if you have them. We'll have someone there in 20 minutes. I hung up and moved quickly, quietly. I packed a duffel bag with clothes, toiletries, the notebook with my documentation, the bank card for my secret account. I grabbed the folder of important papers I'd hidden in the closet. My birth certificate, social security card, the kids' birth certificates. I looked around the house one last time. 32 years of my life in this place. Christmases, birthdays, ordinary Tuesday nights, memories mixed with trauma. I walked out the front door at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, got into a stranger's car, and left my marriage. The shelter was a nondescript building in a part of Memphis I'd never been to. The woman who'd picked me up, whose name was Charisse, led me inside, helped me check in. "You're safe here," she said. "He doesn't know where you are, and we have security." I was given a small room with a twin bed, a dresser, and a shared bathroom down the hall. It was clean but sparse, institutional. It was the freest I'd felt in 32 years. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I kept waiting for Richard to burst through the door. Kept listening for his voice, but he didn't come. Nobody came. I was safe. The next morning, I met with an advocate named Keisha. She was a black woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "First thing we need to do is get you a protection order," she said. "Based on what you've told, me especially, in serious danger, strangulation is one of the strongest predictors of eventual homicide in domestic violence cases." "He's looking for me," I said. I'd gotten 3 voicemails from Richard already, each one more threatening than the last. "He says I better come home. He says I'm going to regret this. Don't respond. Don't answer his calls. Document everything he says, but don't engage. We're going to court today to get that protection order. I don't have money for a lawyer. You don't need one for a protection order. I'll help you fill out the paperwork, and I'll go to court with you." We went to court that afternoon. I stood before a judge and recounted the abuse, years distilled into a 5-minute testimony. I showed the pictures of my bruises. The judge, a woman in her 60s, looked at me with something like recognition in her eyes. "Mrs. Lawson, I'm granting you a temporary protection order. Your husband is ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from you at all times. We'll have a full hearing in 2 weeks to determine if it should be made permanent." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Mrs. Lawson," the judge said as I turned to leave, "I want you to know that leaving was the bravest thing you could have done. Many women your age feel trapped. You're not trapped anymore." The next challenge was telling my children. I called Michelle first. She was the oldest, and I needed her to help tell the others. "Mom, where have you been? Dad's been calling me freaking out, saying you left. He says you're having some kind of mental breakdown. Michelle, I need you to listen to me carefully. I left your father because he's been abusing me for 32 years. Silence, long, uncomfortable silence. "Mom, that's a really serious accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's the truth. I mean, I know you and Dad fight sometimes, but abuse? Mom, you've been married forever. If it was really abuse, you would have left a long time ago." Those words, the ones I'd feared, cut deep. "Michelle, I'm at a domestic violence shelter. Your father tried to strangle me 2 nights ago. I have pictures of the bruises. I have a protection order. This is real. A shelter." "Mom, this is insane. Did Dad upset you? Did you guys have a bad fight? Because leaving like this, not talking to him, going to a shelter, that's really extreme. He tried to kill me, Michelle." "Mom, I think you're overreacting. You're stressed. Maybe you should see a therapist, work through whatever's going on. But leaving Dad, claiming he's abusive, that's going to ruin his life. People are going to think he's a monster. He is a monster." "No, Mom, he's my dad. He's been a good father. He worked hard to provide for us. Yeah, he has a temper, but you don't remember, do you? Or you've convinced yourself it wasn't that bad? Michelle, you used to hide in your closet when he was yelling. You told me once when you were 7 that you wished Daddy didn't live with us anymore. I was a kid. Kids say things." I realized with a sinking feeling that Michelle wasn't going to believe me. "Not now, maybe not ever." "Send me the pictures," she said finally. "If it's really that bad, show me." I sent her the pictures. The bruises on my arms, my hips, the marks on my throat from where Richard had strangled me. Pictures from over the past few months, documenting the abuse. 20 minutes later, Michelle called back. She was crying. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I didn't know. I didn't believe it was this bad. I hid it from you. I thought I was protecting you. But 32 years, Mom. 32 years. Why didn't you leave sooner?" There it was again. The question everyone asks. The question that assumes leaving is simple. That staying is a choice rather than a trap. Because I was scared. Because I had no money, no job, nowhere to go. Because I thought it was my job to keep the family together. Because every time I thought about leaving, your father convinced me I couldn't make it without him. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. You were a child. It wasn't your job to see it. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Stay at the shelter. File for divorce. Try to get back on my feet. Do you need money? I can help. The offer made me cry. Thank you, baby. I might need help eventually, but right now, I just need you to believe me. I believe you, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't at first. Telling Brandon and Tyler was easier because Michelle had already talked to them. They were shocked, angry at Richard, supportive of me. Mom, you should have told us, Brandon said. We could have helped you. You were kids. It wasn't your burden to carry. We're not kids anymore. Richard tried to reach me through the kids. He called them, told them I was lying, that I was having a mental breakdown, that I'd always been dramatic and unstable. Your mother is exaggerating, he told Tyler. We had a fight, like married couples do, and she's blowing it out of proportion. She's manipulating you. But the kids had seen the pictures. They knew. Richard then started a smear campaign on social media. He posted on Facebook about how his wife had abandoned him without explanation, how he was heartbroken and confused, how he'd been nothing but a loving husband for 32 years. Friends and relatives who didn't know the truth commented with sympathy. So sorry you're going through this. Praying for you and Patricia to work things out. Marriage is hard, but don't give up. I wanted to respond, to tell the truth, to show them the pictures. But Keisha, my advocate, warned me against it. Don't engage on social media. He's baiting you. Anything you post can be used against you. Document what he posts, but don't respond. It was hard to stay silent while Richard controlled the narrative, but I did it. Living at the shelter was strange. There were rules, curfews, chores, mandatory counseling sessions. I shared communal spaces with other women, most of them younger than me, some with small children. At first, I felt out of place, like I didn't belong, like I should have had my life together by 52, like I should have been beyond needing a domestic violence shelter. But then I met Carol. Carol was 63 years old, had been married for 40 years, and had just left her husband after he'd broken her arm. We bonded immediately over being the older ladies at the shelter, over the unique shame and stigma we faced. People think domestic violence is for young women, Carol said one night as we sat in the common room. Like if you're our age and still in an abusive marriage, it's somehow your fault. But they don't understand how trapped you can be. No job, no money, no confidence after decades of being torn down. Do you ever feel like it's too late? I asked. Like we're too old to start over. Every day, Carol admitted. But then I think I might have 20 or 30 more years if I'm lucky. Do I want to spend them being hit, or do I want to spend them free? Free, I said. Definitely free. We became each other's support system. When I had court dates, Carol came with me. When she had panic attacks in the middle of the night, I sat with her. We were both learning that it's never too late to save your own life. The divorce process was brutal. Richard hired a lawyer and fought me on everything property division, spousal support. His lawyer painted me as an unstable woman who'd abandoned her husband without cause, who was making false abuse allegations to get a better settlement. My lawyer provided by legal aid presented the evidence. 32 years of documented abuse, photos, police reports from the few times neighbors had called when they heard screaming. The judge, the same woman who'd granted my protection order, saw through Richard's lies. Mr. Lawson, she said during one hearing, I've reviewed the evidence in this case extensively. The pattern of abuse is clear and long-standing. Your attempts to paint your wife as mentally unstable or vindictive are not credible. Richard's face turned red with rage, but he couldn't say anything in court. The divorce was finalized in August, 6 months after I'd left. I was awarded half of our assets, including half the value of the house and spousal support, for 10 years, to give me time to get back on my feet. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to rent a small apartment, enough to survive while I figured out my next steps. Starting over at 52 was terrifying. I hadn't worked in 30 years. I had no recent job experience, no marketable skills, no professional network. I was competing with people half my age for entry-level positions. But I was also more determined than I'd ever been. I took a job training program through the Shelter for Women, re-entering the workforce. I learned basic computer skills, how to write a resume, how to interview. I got certified as a medical billing specialist. Again, my old certification had long expired. In November, I got a job at a doctor's office, doing medical billing. It paid $16 an hour, not much, but it was mine. Money I'd earned, that I controlled, that Richard couldn't take away. My first paycheck. It was $1,024 after taxes for 2 weeks of work. It might not sound like much. It was independence. It was proof that I could survive without Richard. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment in a modest complex. It was small, just 650 square feet. I furnished it slowly, carefully, with things I chose. A blue couch because I'd always liked blue and Richard had always insisted on brown leather. Yellow curtains because they made me happy. Plants because I'd always wanted plants and Richard said they made a mess. Every choice was an act of reclaiming myself. Michelle came to visit for Thanksgiving, our first holiday apart from Richard. She walked into my apartment and looked around. "Mom, this is nice. Really nice. It's small, but it's home. It feels like you," she said. "The old house never felt like you. It felt like a museum where we all had to be careful not to break anything." We cooked Thanksgiving dinner together, just the two of us. Turkey, dressing, sweet potato casserole, green beans. We laughed, told stories, didn't walk on eggshells. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you at first," Michelle said as we ate. "I'm sorry I made you prove it with pictures." "You believed what you needed to believe to survive your childhood," I said. "I understand that. I talked to my therapist about it. She said I had probably suppressed a lot of the abuse because witnessing it was traumatic for me. That I rewrote my memories to make them bearable. Are you okay now? I'm working on it. And Mom, I'm proud of you." Leaving took so much courage. I was terrified. I'm still terrified sometimes, but you did it anyway. That's what courage is. That Christmas, all 3 of my kids came to my apartment. Brandon brought his fiancée. Tyler brought his girlfriend. Michelle came with her partner. We crammed into my tiny living room, ate too much food, exchanged modest gifts. It was the best Christmas I'd had in 32 years. "Mom, I have something for you," Brandon said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a card. "To help you start over." The card read, "We love you and we're proud of you. Michelle, Brandon, and Tyler." I cried. The good kind of tears. "You didn't have to do this. We wanted to," Tyler said. "You sacrificed so much for us. Let us help you now." That money gave me breathing room. I paid off some debt, bought a reliable used car to replace the one I'd been sharing with another shelter resident, put the rest in savings. But more than the money, what they gave me was belief. Belief that I wasn't crazy, wasn't exaggerating, wasn't making a mistake. Belief that I deserved better, deserved safety, deserved a life beyond survival. Richard didn't take the divorce well. He continued to harass me, despite the protection order. He'd drive by my apartment, call from different numbers, send emails that ranged from apologetic to threatening. "Please come back. I've changed. I'll do better. You're making a huge mistake. You're throwing away our life together. You're going to regret this. You'll come crawling back when you realize how hard life is alone. You're a bitter old woman, and you're going to die alone." I documented every contact, reported every violation of the protection order. Eventually, Richard spent a weekend in jail for contempt of court. That seemed to get through to him. The harassment slowed, then stopped. I heard through the grapevine that he'd moved to Arkansas to be closer to his brother, that he was telling people I'd had a mental breakdown, that I'd turned the kids against him, that he was the victim. Let him tell his story. I knew the truth. Today, I'm 54 years old. It's been 2 years since I left Richard. I'm still working at the doctor's office. I gotta resign now, make $18.50 an hour. I'm taking online classes to update my skills and hopefully move into a management position. I'm still in therapy, still working through 32 years of trauma. Some days are harder than others. I still flinch when I hear a door slam. I still have nightmares where Richard finds me and hurts me. I still struggle with feeling like I'm not good enough, not smart enough, but I'm healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but healing. I volunteer at the domestic violence shelter now, helping other women navigate the legal system and find resources. I've become an advocate for older women escaping abuse, speaking at community events about the unique challenges we face. Last month, I spoke at a church in Memphis about my experience. After the talk, a woman in her late 60s approached me. I've been married for 48 years. My husband has been hitting me for 45 of them. I thought I was too old to leave. I thought no one would believe me. But listening to you, maybe it's not too late. I took her hands in mine. It's not too late. It's never too late to save your own life. She started crying. I don't know if I can do it. I'm sick. Where would I go? How would I survive? The same way I did. One day at a time. One small step at a time. And you won't be alone. There are resources. I gave her the shelter's number, my personal number, information about legal aid. I don't know if she'll call. I hope she does. Carol, my friend from the shelter, and I have coffee every Tuesday morning. She got her own apartment 6 months ago and is working part-time at a library. We've become chosen family, 2 women who survived, who rebuilt, who refused to accept that we were too old or too broken to have lives worth living. Do you ever miss being married? Carol asked me once. I miss the idea of partnership. I miss having someone to share things with. But do I miss Richard? Never. Not for a single second. Do you think you'll ever date again? Maybe. Eventually. When I'm ready. But I'm learning to be happy alone first. To be my own companion, my own source of strength. I'm proud of us, Carol said, raising her coffee cup in a toast. Me too, I said, clinking my cup against hers. My relationship with my children continues to heal and deepen. Michelle is getting married next year, and she's asked me to help plan the wedding. Brandon's wedding is in the spring. I'm walking him down the aisle since his father won't be there. Tyler calls me every Sunday just to talk, to check in, to tell me about his life. Mom, I need to tell you something, Tyler said during one of our calls. I'm in therapy. Oh, honey, I'm glad. We all need support. I'm working through the trauma of growing up watching Dad abuse you. My therapist says it affected me more than I realized. I have trouble with relationships, with trust, with expressing emotions. I'm so sorry, Tyler. I thought I was protecting you by staying. I know, Mom, and I don't blame you. But I need to process it so I don't repeat the patterns. So if I ever have kids, I can break the cycle. You will, baby. You're already breaking it by getting help, by being aware, by being nothing like your father. These conversations are hard, but they're necessary. My children are dealing with their own trauma from growing up in an abusive home. I can't fix that, but I can support them, believe them, and show them through my own healing that it's possible to move forward. 6 months ago, something unexpected happened. I was at the grocery store, pushing my cart through the produce section, when I saw Richard. He was thinner than I remembered, grayer. He looked old, tired. For 32 years, he'd been this towering, terrifying presence in my life. Now he just looked like a sad, angry man approaching 60. Our eyes met. I saw recognition. Then something I couldn't quite read, shame maybe, or regret. I turned my cart around and walked away. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but I walked away with my head held high. He didn't follow me. He didn't call out. He just let me go. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. I saw you today. You look good, happy, Richard. I stared at that text for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond with anger, to list every terrible thing he'd done, to make him understand the depth of pain he'd caused, but I didn't respond at all. I blocked the number and deleted the message. His apology, if that's what it was, didn't change anything. Didn't undo 32 years of abuse. Didn't erase the scars, the trauma, the years I'd lost. I'd spent too long living in reaction to Richard, adjusting myself to his moods, basing my worth on his opinions, letting him define my reality. I wasn't going to give him any more of my energy, not even the energy it would take to respond. Last week, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went on a date. His name is Leonard. He's 58, a widower who lost his wife to cancer 3 years ago. We met at a community center event, started talking about books, discovered we had similar taste in old soul music. He asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. I said yes, terrified. The coffee date went well. Leonard was kind, easy to talk to, respectful of my space. When he walked me to my car, he didn't try to kiss me or touch me. He just said, "I'd like to see you again, if you're interested." "I need to be honest with you," I said. "I got out of an abusive marriage 2 years ago. I'm still healing. I'm not sure I'm ready for anything serious." "That's okay," he said simply. "We can take it slow as you need. And if you decide you're not interested, that's okay too." His patience, his respect for my boundaries, it was so foreign to me. For so long, my needs, my comfort, my pace hadn't mattered. Now here was someone saying they did matter. "We've been on for dates now. We're taking it very, very slowly." Sometimes I get anxious, waiting for him to show his true colors, to reveal that underneath the kindness is anger and control. But my therapist reminds me that's my trauma talking, not reality. "Not every man is Richard," she says. "You get to choose who you let into your life now, and you get to leave at any time if something doesn't feel right." Choice? This past March, on the 2-year anniversary of leaving, I did something symbolic. I got a tattoo. It's a phoenix rising from flames, with the words "never too late" underneath. It's on my shoulder blade, where Richard used to grab me and shake me. Michelle came with me to get it. "Mom, are you sure?" she asked as we sat in the tattoo parlor. "You've never been a tattoo person." "That's exactly why I'm doing it," I said. The old Patricia wouldn't have gotten a tattoo because Richard would have been furious. But the old Patricia is gone. This is the new me. The me who makes my own choices. The tattoo hurt not as much as 32 years of abuse, but enough to feel significant. Enough to mark this transformation permanently on my body. When it was done, I looked at it in the mirror. A phoenix, rising, reborn. "It's perfect, Mom," Michelle said, tears in her eyes. I recently started writing a book about my experience. Not because I think I'm special or unique, unfortunately. My story is far too common, but because I want other women, especially older women, to know they're not alone. The working title is Never Too Late: Escaping Domestic Violence After 50. In it, I'm documenting not just my story, but the stories of other women I've met through the shelter and advocacy work. Women like Carol. Women like the 67-year-old from the church. Women who were told they were too old to start over, too damaged to deserve better, too much of a burden for anyone to want to help. Women who proved all of that wrong. I'm also including practical resources. How to document abuse, how to safety plan, how to find legal help, housing assistance, job training, how to rebuild credit, restart a career, rediscover who you are beyond the abuse. Because leaving is just the first step. Rebuilding is the marathon. Sometimes people ask me if I regret staying as long as I did. It's a complicated question. Do I wish I'd left sooner? Yes. I wish I'd left when the kids were young. Wish they hadn't grown up witnessing abuse. Wish I hadn't spent 3 decades of my life in fear. But I also know that leaving earlier might not have been possible. I didn't have the resources, the awareness, the support system, the strength. I left when I could leave, when the alternative was dying, and I'm learning not to punish myself for that. Not to live in the regret of what I should have done differently. You survived, my therapist reminds me. For 32 years, you did what you had to do to survive. That's not weakness. That's strength. I'm learning to believe that. Last Sunday, I went to church for the first time in 2 years. I'd stopped going after I left Richard, because it was the church we'd attended together, where everyone knew us as a couple, where Richard played the role of devoted husband and deacon. But I found a new church, a small, AIM church in North Memphis, where nobody knew my history. I could just be Patricia, not Richard's wife or that woman who finally left. The sermon was about renewal, about God's ability to make all things new. The pastor, a woman in her 50s, spoke about how it's never too late to start over, how God's grace extends to every stage of life. After service, she greeted me at the door. First time visiting us. Yes, ma'am. What brings you to our church? I needed a fresh start, a place where I could just be me. She smiled, and something in her eyes told me she understood. Well, you're welcome here, sister, just as you are. I cried in my car afterward. Good tears, healing tears. Today is Friday. I'm sitting on the small balcony of my apartment, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. It's a ritual I've developed, starting each day with gratitude, with intention, with the awareness that I'm alive and free. I'm 54 years old. I have gray hair that I no longer color because I've earned every silver strand. I have wrinkles from stress and trauma, but also new ones from smiling and laughing. I have a body that Richard told me was worthless, but that I'm learning to appreciate for its strength, its resilience, its ability to heal. I'm not where I thought I'd be at 54. I thought I'd be celebrating my 34th wedding anniversary, maybe planning for retirement, playing with grandchildren. Instead, I'm starting over, learning who I am, building a life from scratch. And you know what? It's hard, but it's beautiful. It's terrifying, but it's free. I'm not too old to start over. I'm not too damaged to deserve better. I'm not too broken to rebuild. Neither are you, if you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story. 3 months later, it's June now, and I'm sitting in a conference room at the state capitol. I've been invited to testify before a legislative committee about a bill that would increase funding for domestic violence services, specifically for older victims. I'm nervous, my hands shaking as I hold my prepared testimony. But Michelle is here, sitting in the audience. Carol is here too, and Keisha, my advocate from the shelter. I'm not alone. When they call my name, I stand and walk to the microphone. My name is Patricia Ann Lawson. I'm 54 years old. For 32 years, I was trapped in an abusive marriage. I stayed because I had no money, no job, no way to support myself. I stayed because I was told I was too old to start over, that no one would want me, that I should be grateful for what I had. I finally left 2 years ago when my husband tried to strangle me. I left with nothing but a duffel bag and the belief that dying free was better than living trapped. The resources that saved my life, the shelter, the legal aid, the job training, those programs are underfunded and overwhelmed. There aren't enough beds in shelters. There aren't enough lawyers to help women navigate the legal system. There aren't enough services specifically designed for older women who face unique barriers to leaving. I'm here to ask you to fund these programs, to acknowledge that domestic violence doesn't only happen to young women. That abuse often escalates when children leave home and victims are isolated. That women in their 50s and 70s deserve support, deserve resources, deserve the chance to escape and rebuild. I left at 52. Some people said I was too old to start over. They were wrong. But I had help that might not be there for the next woman. Who needs it if we don't fund these programs adequately? Please don't let another woman die because she thinks it's too late to save herself. Please don't let another woman stay in hell because there's no room at the shelter. Please don't let another woman go back to her abuser because she can't afford a lawyer. Fund these programs. Save lives. Show older women that we matter, that we deserve safety, that it's never too late. When I finish, there's silence. Then applause. Several legislators are wiping their eyes. The committee chairwoman, a woman in her 60s, leans forward. Mrs. Lawson, thank you for your courage in sharing your story. I can assure you, this committee will give this bill serious consideration. As I walk back to my seat, Mom, that was amazing. You're amazing. I don't feel amazing. I feel exhausted, vulnerable, exposed. But I also feel purposeful. If my story can help even one woman, if my testimony can help secure funding that saves even one life, then it was worth it. The bill passes 3 months later. It increases funding for domestic violence services by 40%, with specific allocations for programs serving older victims, job training for women re-entering the workforce after long absences, and housing assistance. I'm invited to the bill signing ceremony. Governor Williams, a woman in her late 50s, asks me to stand next to her as she signs. Mrs. Lawson, your testimony was the turning point for this legislation, she says. Your courage to speak out gave voice to thousands of women who've been suffering in silence. As cameras flash and people applaud, I think about all the women this bill will help. Women like me, like Carol, like the 67-year-old from the church. Women who thought it was too late. Women who were wrong. 1 year later, my book, Never Too Late, Escaping Domestic Violence After 50, is published by a small press specializing in social justice issues. It's not a bestseller, but it finds its audience women my age, domestic violence advocates, therapists. I get emails and letters every week from women who've read it. I'm 61 and I just left my husband after 40 years. Your book gave me the courage. I'm a domestic violence counselor and your book is now required. Reading for my staff. Thank you for highlighting the specific needs of older survivors. I gave your book to my mother, who's been in an abusive marriage for 35 years. She called me yesterday and said she's ready to leave. You saved her life. Each message makes me cry. Each message reminds me why I wrote the book, why I shared my story, why I keep speaking out. The book leads to more speaking engagements. I travel to shelters, churches, community centers across the South, sharing my story and encouraging others. At one event in Birmingham, Alabama, my hometown, an elderly woman approaches me. She must be in her 80s. I was married for 56 years, she tells me. My husband died 2 years ago. Everyone at his funeral talked about what a good man he was, how much they'd miss him. I stood there and felt nothing but relief. Relief that I'd survived, that he couldn't hurt me anymore. But I felt guilty for feeling relieved. Like something was wrong with me. She takes my hand. Your book helped me understand that I wasn't wrong to feel relieved. That surviving abuse is something to be proud of, not ashamed of. Thank you. I hug her, this stranger who's become a sister in survival. You're so strong, I tell her. You survived. That's what matters. So are you, honey. So are you. Leonard and I are still together, taking things slow. We've talked about moving in together eventually, but I'm not ready yet. I need my own space, my own apartment. The security of knowing I can support myself and don't need anyone. I understand, he says when I tell him this. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. His patience continues to astound me. After 32 years with Richard, I'd forgotten that love could be gentle, that relationships could be partnerships instead of prisons. We have conversations I never had with Richard, about boundaries, about respect. Leonard listens when I tell him about my triggers, loud voices, sudden movements, feeling trapped. He adjusts his behavior accordingly, never making me feel like my needs are a burden. Patricia, you've been through trauma, he says. Of course you have triggers. That doesn't make you damaged or difficult. It makes you human. I'm learning what healthy love looks like. It's taking time, but I'm learning. My children continue to heal from their own childhood trauma. Michelle had a baby girl last year, my first grandchild. She's named her Charlene Patricia after my mother and me. I want her to know she comes from a line of strong women, Michelle told me when she announced the name. Women who survived, women who broke cycles, women who chose themselves. Holding baby Charlene for the first time, I made a promise. I will break the cycle. I will show you that love doesn't hurt, that family is safe, that women are valuable beyond their ability to please others. Brandon's wedding was beautiful. I walked him down the aisle, and when the officiant asked, "Who gives this man?" I said, "I do," with pride and love. Richard wasn't there. He wasn't invited. Brandon said he didn't want anyone at his wedding who'd ever hurt someone he loved. Tyler is thriving in his career as a social worker, specifically working with youth from abusive homes. I want to help kids like I was, he told me. Kids who are witnessing abuse and don't know how to process it. My children are breaking the cycle in their own ways, and that might be the greatest gift of all. Carol and I still have coffee every Tuesday. She's dating someone now, Tua, retired teacher named William, who treats her with the kindness she deserves. "Can you believe us?" she said last week, laughing. Two old ladies starting over, dating like teenagers, building lives we never thought we could have. We're not old, I corrected her. We're experienced. We're survivors. We're free. You're right, we're free. We're also starting a support group specifically for women over 50 who've left abusive relationships. The first meeting is next week. We've already had 12 women sign up. We're going to call it Phoenix Rising, Carol suggested, because that's what we are. Rising from the ashes. Perfect, I agreed. Sometimes I think about Richard. I wonder if he ever thinks about what he did, if he feels remorse, if he's changed. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. He was 32 years of my life, but he's not going to be the rest of it. I'm 55 now. If I'm lucky, I have 20 or 30 years left, maybe more. I'm going to spend them free, surrounded by people who love me without hurting me, doing work that matters, building a legacy of strength and healing. I'm going to spend them proving that it's never too late to save your own life.